Good morning, everyone. My name's Joanne Cottery from Community Literacy of Ontario, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Mastering the Puzzle Pieces, an exciting webinar on relationship building and part of the LMP webinar series. So I'm going to be doing a few housekeeping items and then I'll pass it over to our presenters. First of all, I thought you might like to know who's online. I know when we're on webinars we like to know that. And everyone here is either from an LBS program, about 60% of the people here are from LBS programs, and another 20% from employment services, and another 20% who are from both employment and LBS providers. There'll be about 50 people online on this webinar today, and we're delighted to welcome you all. Most people are from the Southwest region, followed by a tie between the Northern and Central regions, and the smallest contingent is from Eastern Ontario. So wherever you're from, welcome. So as Vicki mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available, we'll show you on the next slides where you can find it later towards the end of just before Christmas. And slide decks and handouts were emailed to everyone who participated or who registered for this webinar. If you don't have them, just check your junk box for the clo@bellnet.ca email or email that email and request the slides. Deb and Jen will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, but as they go, please go ahead and post your comments in the text chat, which you can see on the screen by that blue arrow. And also we'd love to hear any comments, resources, things that are happening in your program as well. So as we mentioned, the webinar is being recorded, so you don't have to take notes. Could you go to the next slide, please, Vicki? And this is where the recordings for all 5 of the Labor Market Partnership Agreement webinars will be available at these 3 websites and possibly others as well. So you'll just have to go there and you can view all the webinars, which will be great because the content's so wonderful. So without any further ado, I will pass it over to Deborah Flynn. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joanne. Good morning, everyone. It's definitely beginning to look a lot like Christmas in Walkerton. It is white here, absolutely white. Anyway, I'm just going to check with Vicki because this is my very first webinar. Vicki, can you see my slides okay?
No, actually, we can't, and I did pass the presenter over to you. You may have got a pop-up that said you just have to accept you're now the presenter.
Oh, I do? Show my screen?
There you go.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Vicki. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Deborah Flynn, and I work for QUILL Learning Network. About this project, Literacy Link South Central is the lead on this LMP project that we have, and 7 networks across southwestern Ontario are participating in it. Today you'll hear from myself, from QUILL, and also from Tri-County Literacy Network. Jennifer Kirkham will be giving that presentation a little later. 10 of our strategies were designed to bring lower skilled and marginalized clients closer to employment, and that's what we worked on. Okay. Oh, sorry, everyone. I'm getting used to this. It worked the other day. Anyways, my part of this project was to look at the best practices for multi-service centers. And Jennifer will be talking later on about linking adult literacy to poverty reduction. And I want to thank Community Literacy of Ontario for hosting and supporting us on this work. Mastering the puzzle pieces. I called it that because I really think that that's what we're doing in literacy. We're moving all our pieces of the puzzle together to get a huge picture of how we can best support our clients. And so we looked at the best practices for multi-service centers. Our research we did some research. We looked at multi-service centers across Ontario, across Canada, and into the United States. Then we looked at
Deb,
sorry, Vicki?
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt you. There is a problem with your slides. We're only seeing half of them. So I'm going to take the screen back and pull up your slides, okay? So just give me a sec to do that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, jeepers.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I just have to get to the right spot. So I'm sorry, which slide were you on?
I'm on the one that says QUILL's role. Next one.
There we go. Sorry.
Okay. So, so how am I going to know, Vicki, that you're going to just move them ahead? I guess you'll just have to, I'll have to tell you.
Just exactly. Next? Yep, please just say next slide.
Okay, okay. So, thank you for your patience, everyone. So our research was to look at best practices for multi-service centers, and then to look at the coordination of the local services in the Perth and Huron areas where QUILL works, and we cover actually the area of Grey Bruce and Perth and Huron counties and South Georgian Bay. But in Huron and Perth, we have a number of centers where the employment services and the LBS programs are together in the same center. So we wanted to ensure that they were working as efficiently and effectively as they could so that they could help their clients move as quickly from, from not having a grade 12 into employment goals. Next slide. We tried two different approaches in our region. The first approach was in Grey and Bruce. We don't have multi-service centers, a lot of them. And we have a lot of people who are just offices here and there, and they're not all connected in one building. So what we did was we hosted a one-day service coordination day, and we called it Social Networking for Social Services. It comprised of 3 different activities that day. The first one was speed dating. And I know you're going to laugh. Really, speed dating? Yes, but we had our social services come, and we sat them across from each other, and they got to talk to each other for 2.5 minutes each and tell them, their name, what their service did, and how to make an efficient referral to that agency. So everyone got to talk to everyone else in the room during that time. The second part of that day was to have the 4-county labor market planning board give us an information session on our labor market and where the jobs are in our area. We had someone come from 211 to tell us about that service, and we had the Mental Health Association come and talk about their new crisis intervention series program that just was starting up. It was really engaging, and people had lots of questions, and they wanted to know that information. The last part of the day, next slide, in the afternoon, we did case studies. And so we sat with our partners on the reference committee, which was the planning board, their employment services, Ontario Works, and some of our literacy and essential skills programs. And we did up these case studies, and you'll see this one is Annie Oakley, 24, mother of 3, and we gave the case studies to the people who were involved in the day, and we broke up the organization so we didn't have all of the ES providers sitting at one table together. We made sure that everybody was mixed up quite well, and they were to look at this case study and then talk about what they would do in their agency to help this person. And you'll see the inset, the picture of the brochures and the business cards and stuff. That they just charted that on a flip chart piece of paper and then shared that information with all of us. It was very successful. We had about 40 people attend that day, and we're planning to have another one this year in May. Everyone said that it really opened their eyes to just sit down and talk to each other and have so much time networking. So that was the first approach for those areas that don't have multi-service centers. Next slide. In the areas where we did, we facilitated discussion, and actually Jennifer, who is going to give the next presentation, was the consultant that worked with us. So we discussed the present strengths and opportunities that they would have at their centers. We did the research on best practices, and you would have received that information from Joanne with the PowerPoint that we have today. We took time to look at what an ideal system would look like, and also to identify concrete next steps. Next slide, Vicki. So I just want to give credit to the programs and the staff who attended those sessions in Huron and Perth. And we had some people from Kincardine come. So we had the Adult Learning Centers, Conestoga College, Contact North, BPI, Avon-Maitland District School Board, Partners in Employment. They all came and participated in 3 sessions that we had. Next slide. So some of the strengths that they identified were that they were very collaborative. In some of the Centers for Employment and Learning in Huron County, they had a number of different community organizations dropping into their centers. Even some people were there regularly, day to day, and other organizations would drop in once a month, once every 2 weeks, and they could see their clients there. They felt that it was really important to have these multi-service centers because it was so convenient for the clients. And it's also a real bonus for all of the staff. They get to know the other services that are going on in the community. Some of the areas that they thought they could improve on were you know, the limited resources in the service areas, because we have a huge rural area. So, you know, we have 4 or 5 centers in the county of Huron, or 2 or 3 centers, or 3 centers in Perth. But wouldn't it be nice if we had more centers to cover that rural area? Because in our area, transportation is a major problem. You can't just hop a bus and get to you know, the next town. We don't have that. It's a very difficult situation. If you don't have a car, you're always calling friends and neighbors to take you where you need to go, because we just don't have transportation in this area. Next slide. Okay, so here I'm going to go through the best practices for that we have. We had 10 of them. The research was done by Cindy Davidson, and as I said earlier, she did it throughout Ontario, Canada, and across through the States and into New Zealand and Australia. If you want to look at the best practice guide that we sent out to you, all of the organizations that were that she looked at and all of her research material is in there for you to see it. In fact, she talks about different models of multi-service centers, and one of the first ones that comes up, and I have to give credit to this, is Port Cares in Port Colborne. I'm sure many of you have heard about it, but it's a wonderful multi-service center that is working there. And in Tillsonburg, the district, Tillsonburg and District Multi-Service Agency, the John Howard Society in Ottawa, and then it moved on to multi-service centers in Washington, etc. So but I wanted to give credit to those ones that we have that are so close to us in southwestern Ontario that we can look to for best practices. The first best practice: ensure appropriate agencies are co-located to match user needs. And that's always something that you should be looking at is, you know, do you have financial help there? Do you have academic help, employment help? Are the next step agencies involved in your center? Can you, and when you're going to recruit new agencies, what should they be? Who should they be? So next slide, Vicki. So this is the point where, and this is going to be the routine for the rest of these slides, the best practice and the opportunities for improvement that our agencies that were working on the project identified. They came up with some really neat ideas about what they could do with, you know, getting a clothing closet for people who were going out to interviews, or having personal counseling on site, and even bringing in mini libraries. Of course, we have libraries in all of our communities, but maybe having some specific books that that could be used by the clients that are in the in that community. Trying to help out with the transportation problem. In Grey County, our Ontario Works provides transportation across the county for their clients to come to the adult learning centers, and they do that throughout the week. So how could we maybe piggyback on any of that stuff? They thought that a common calendar would really be helpful, because they all have their individual organizational calendars, but a common one might be better so that everybody knows what others are doing. And then to recruit other organizations, you know, that they felt were important, which was legal, financial, maybe have probation and parole drop in, LEAP program, and to think about doing specialized programming for their clients. So, Vicki, next slide, please. The second practice that we looked at was implement effective planning and organizational strategies for the center. So consult with the service users, like consult with the clients. How can we make your activity here more beneficial for you? And how can we, when you're coming in and you're working with our clients, with our staff? So that was something that we found out in our research. And clearly define the model and the structure of this multi-service center so that everybody knows how it's working, and you have people involved in working and planning this center. Next slide, please. Some of our opportunities for improvement were having moving from informal to more formal discussion and meetings, and again calendaring the events and having specific events for the community, talk as a group to bring in and the new services, do some common practices together. Could be services, could be surveys, could be referral forms, and learn how to figure out how to share information about the clients. This will all benefit in increasing the traffic flow. Next slide. Look for ways resources can be shared or pooled amongst all the agencies. We're all having a tight time with our budgets, and we're not getting any, doesn't seem like we're getting that much more money. So, pooling budgets together and really thinking about how you can share staff work and even advocate for more funding. Those are best practices that we've seen in the centers that we looked at. Next slide, Vicki. So our opportunities for improvement were to look, do marketing together. Combine your marketing. Why are you spending a budget on marketing for your service when you could be sharing that budget with all of the services in your centers, and then getting that much more bang for your dollar? And sharing admin was a definite thing that, a definite item that people talked about that they thought would be a benefit that they could move on right away. And having letters of agreement between the different services, that was something that they thought that they could move ahead on. Vicki, next slide, please. Best practice 4, ensure there's ease of accessibility. Make sure that it's, like we talk about being on a transportation route, but in Grey Bruce here in Perth, that's almost impossible. But in our communities of Stratford and Owen Sound, you could be on a bus route. Always consider the fact that it's accessible by wheelchair, that it's safe, and that there's appropriate internal spaces. Having offices where people can get off and have private conversations is an important piece that you should be looking at. Next slide, please. The opportunities for improvement were looking at they felt that, they all had customer service charters, but they hadn't shared them with each other. And they hadn't devised them together. So they thought that that was something that they could move forward through immediately. So, and then offering some of our programs, especially up in Kincardine, like offering credit courses or self-employment workshops, and expanding the delivery that they already have in their center. Next slide, please. Secure commitments from partnering agencies. That was best practice of that we saw when we were looking at places like Tillsonburg and Port Cairns. Having a mission statement that is for the center, not just for the organization. Common principles of partnership, shared confidentiality and release forms. And next slide, please. And our programs felt that they needed to look at memorandum of agreement or letters of agreement that they could share between themselves, and so have referrals and release forms that are common to all of their agencies. These are some concrete things they could start working on to move things along faster. Next slide, please. Practice 6 was have clear understanding of roles and responsibilities amongst partner agencies and their staff, and we found that sharing client profiles, sharing days, orientation of new staff. Those were all best practices that we found out. Doing agency tours and shadow visits, interagency training, incorporating all of that into it. So when we were looking at our, opportunities for improvement, next slide, agencies felt that orienting new staff was a really important piece. One of the agencies said that that wasn't happening, even though they shared space and there was only a wall between their offices. Often new staff who were hired in one, for one service didn't really know fully what was happening, behind the other wall. And I think that's an important piece that we should always think about when we're working together, is that we make sure that everybody understands what we're doing and how we're different and how we can work together. Our agency in Kincardine is not funded by the Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities, the Lake Huron Learning Collaborative site at the Learning Center, and they felt that getting to know all the EOPG updates was an important piece for them, because they had TCU-funded agencies in their center, but they didn't always know what the demands were, the mandates were that they had to follow, and so that would help them be aware of, just the partnership that they had with them. So, next slide, please. Best practice 7, encourage communication and information sharing. Again, going back to this best practice, having a common calendar, having staff skills database, like what are those skills that your staff have, and having that database there so that if you needed to go to someone or you were looking for something in particular, you could go to a person who might have it right there. But you might not know that about Sue, who's 3 offices down from you, that she could actually do that work for you and that she has that ability. Maybe she's great at working with a graphic arts program, and she does it on the side, and she doesn't do it at work, but she might be the person that you could turn to do up your posters or put out media releases and stuff like that for you. Just jazz them up. So, having that skills database would be an excellent best practice to have. And communication protocols, and always thinking about, meeting to share information, whether it be formal or informal. And I think this whole idea of having an acronym list and defining them is really important. We all know how many acronyms we use in the literacy field, so you can only imagine as we expand and have other services come in and work with us, how large that acronym list would be. Next slide, please. The opportunities for improvement were to explore and expand participants. They felt that they could have other organizations come into their center, to streamline reports, and someone said to wear name tags so people can identify who you are and what agency you're with, and you can tell the difference between whether that person is a staff person or a client. You could have a new person coming in on the job and not wearing a name tag, and you might think they're a client. So, an important thing to do, wear name tags. Create common newsletters. Why have a newsletter going from, the learning center and the employment service provider and maybe the LEAP program, when you could put all of that together, snip it together and have one, And the question, do our boards work together? Because we had 2 agencies who, an adult learning program and an employment services, both were supported by a board of directors, but they didn't think that their board of directors ever met formally together. Like, they hadn't done that. They knew each other informally because they were in the same community, but just to have them sit down and meet formally and help you to work on some of the items of the letters of agreement or memorandum, and have them involved in the work that you're doing at the center. Next slide, please. Our best practice for 8 was collaborate on activities and ventures when feasible and appropriate. So, could you put a website together or a directory? Again, joint newsletters. You'll see that a number of the items keep coming up in a lot of the best practices. Do cross-training opportunities for clients so that you can have them intermingle if the adult learning program and the employment services or training will have them share, and then they can cross-pollinate. And maybe some of those employment service clients who weren't really interested in going into an adult learning program would want to, because right away they've built a relationship with someone, they know someone there, and you know, we hear that the most effective marketing we have in the literacy field is word of mouth. So, I mean, having them cross-pollinate and do cross-training together is a real opportunity for us to, you know, increase the clients that are coming to our programs. Next slide, please. And then the opportunities to collaborate that were identified by our programs were, you know, having a structured calendar, joint flyers, doing open houses. Next slide, please. Our second last best practice was to ensure there's a link to employers or employment opportunities, and, you know, posting job vacancies, developing curriculum around workplace and workforce opportunities, looking at doing workshops for employers and other services, maybe having your chambers or your workforce planning boards be involved in your center, and the opportunities that we identified in our area. Next slide, please. Were to have employer nights. Often, you know, getting the employer into your center then educates them on what you're doing and what services are provided, and it's not just, oh yeah, you know, that's the Center for Employment and Learning over there in Godrich. It's actually a place that employers know, they're willing to use, they'll send their staff there, they'll talk about it, you'll have their support. And so that was definitely something that people wanted to move on. And to link websites. You know, you could have the adult learning programs of Perth and the Partners in Employment have separate websites, but if you had one portal for the center in St. Mary's, then people would go into that portal, and then they could split off and go into the separate website. So linking websites would be an important thing to do, a good thing to do. Next slide, please. And our last practice is to implement protocols that enhance referrals and information exchange with clients. So using that case management approach was really important, and having a checklist for all the agencies to, you know, that are involved with the client, so that everybody knows what others are doing. Common assessment referral protocols, interagency data management system. That was a best practice and something that we could move towards. The opportunities, next slide, Vicki. They thought, like, right away, let's meet, let's talk about all of this stuff. That's what our programs felt was the most important thing that we needed to make sure that all of this, the services that were housed under one roof, were meeting and talking about these items. Next slide, Vicki. So there are definitely challenges whenever you're going to have a multi-service center. You know, you have funding concerns. You have to make sure that your communication is two-way, that you're adapting to work together, that you're considering the partnerships and how it affects the staff, that too much referring on and passing the buck, or you're not doing too much of that, that you're really taking care of your client and you're meeting all of their needs before you send them off to the next service that could help them out. And so there are challenges, but there's a lot of benefits that go into having a multi-service center. It's a benefit for your clients that they only have to go to one place and can deal with a number of services in that one area, rather than having to try and manage getting from one part of town or one part of the county to another part of the county to be served, to meet with other case managers for any services that they might have. So that's a definite benefit. It's a benefit for your staff. There's quite a morale boost when you're working together, and there's all that brainstorming and energy that goes on with the staff, and the support that you have with others, and how you can become more of a community and a team together in your centers. So it benefits the community when you can create a multi-service center. So our next slide, Vicki. And just to tell you, these are, we had to, when we asked our programs that were involved, you know, what was the ideal and what could they work on, this is a list of the actions that they felt that they would move forward on. And so they hadn't been meeting formally, they were going to do that. They were thinking about creating a common brochure. They decided on having a night where they would invite employers in and have them come into the center and do something special with employers. Make better use of a TV or a screen so that it posts information for all the services that are in that particular center. So, down as simple as wearing name tags, maybe even creating a video that would that new staff would look at, so that when they came on site, they'd say, oh, well, at the Stratford campus, well, this is Conestoga College, and this is what we do. Here's the services that we have at our center. Here's Contact North. This is what they do. Here's the adult learning program, and then go on and do a short little video so staff could be have that orientation immediately when they come on to site. So when they come into work, when they start. Vicki, next slide, please. So that's the list of our best practices, and as I said, they're all in the report that we sent out to you. I just wanted to make a note that in that report on best practices, Cindy did get for us a really good example of career laddering. So when you're looking through the appendices, take a look at that. We often hear about career laddering. It's talked about a lot in our community, and it's the move of what's happening in the States, and they're bringing it to Canada. So I would say take a minute, go through the appendices, and look at the sample career ladder and lattice for hospitality. It's in there, it's really clear, and it shows how career laddering moves your clients along, and it makes you think about, well, if we had a multi-service center, how could we do this for our clients? What could we do with all our services so that we could support them in career laddering? So with that, I'm going to thank you all for listening to my very quick presentation about what we did. And when we talk about all of these processes at the multi-service centers, it's to strengthen our inside so that we can be stronger at helping our clients and getting them to move on to employment and to serve those marginalized clients so that they can reach their employment goal. I'm going to turn the time over now to Jennifer Kirkham with Tri-County Literacy Network, and she'll give your presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Deb. And Jennifer, do you want me to hand the screen over to you, or do you want to just carry on doing what we're doing?
Sure, why don't you hand it over to me? We'll see how that goes.
There we go. That looks good.
Great. So welcome for the next half of your webinar. So we're moving from the Grey Bruce Huron-Perth County down to Tri-County Literacy Network, which is the Chatham, Kent, Windsor, Essex, so more the south end of the province, and talking about one of the other LMP projects, which was called Linking Adult Literacy to Poverty Reduction. So I'm Jennifer Kirkham, and I'm going to be presenting on behalf of the Tri-County Literacy Network. We're going to cover a couple of different things today. I'm going to give you a bit of the background to the project, and then really focus on some of the highlights and lessons learned from the project, and then talk a little bit about next steps and opportunities for the future that were identified by the community and Tri-County Literacy Network in terms of how they want to move forward with the project. It's always one of the things with projects is that they're fairly time limited in terms of the funding they receive. So in this instance, the community has identified some concrete next steps that they're interested in looking at moving forward with. This is a really interesting project because it's not one that just started this year. What this project did is it built on a project that was done in 2009 and 2010, which was called Linking Adult Literacy to Poverty Reduction. And that project identified a number of different strategies that could be put in place to actually link literacy and poverty reduction, including the Bridges Out of Poverty training. So what this project did is it built on the findings from that project, and it built on it by doing a sort of follow-up online survey with both LBS service providers and non-LBS service providers who were involved in the earlier project. So trying to get a sense of what's happened since we initially introduced some of these strategies, what's being implemented in your communities and in your agencies, and what's the impact you're seeing in terms of learner and client success. So doing a bit of a follow-up and seeing what's working and what's not working in terms of learner and client success. So we did a follow-up survey earlier this year and then held a roundtable with LBS and non-LBS service providers, really to help us interpret and contextualize some of the information that were received out of the survey. So this slide is sort of busy, sort of small writing, but I'm going to go through it sort of chunk by chunk in the rest of the webinar. You'll see, though, in the original project, these were the best practices that were identified for linking adult learning or literacy to poverty reduction. And you'll notice that they are, the project identified actions on 3 different levels. So you'll see here there's some individual actions, which are things that can be done at an agency level. There's some program elements. This one focused specifically on LBS service providers, saying what are some of those elements that can be included in your program delivery. And then the 3rd level was around community engagement, both for LBS and non-LBS service providers, in terms of looking at how do we connect out or interact with the community. So those are the 3 levels of best practices that were identified out of the original project. So what this project did this year then is take a look at each of those levels and find out what was happening in each of them. So this is sort of a blow up of that triangle you saw, but this is that top level. So the individual action strategies that were identified in terms of the best practice through that original project. So you see there's a whole range of them in terms of increasing staff awareness, receiving Bridges Out of Poverty training, making staff aware of poverty reduction practices, becoming involved in and collaborating on issues related to poverty and poverty reduction. Valuing staff, it's interesting, it talks about a lot of different skills. So you see relationship building skills, problem solving skills, empowering your learners to understand the role in society, valuing staff with communication skills. So a lot of different sort of pieces. But these were the individual action strategies that were identified as best practices in terms of linking literacy to poverty reduction. So what we did in the online survey is we asked LBS and non-LBS providers if their agency currently implemented those best practice strategies and whether or not they felt that the implementation of those strategies actually helped the client or learner in terms of sort of their path and what they were looking for in terms of success. So from that long list that you just saw of those individual action strategies, these are the highlights what we saw. So it's interesting that the things that LBS and non-LBS service providers felt really had an impact were staff who demonstrated a number of skills. So they mentioned strong relationship building skills, strong communication skills, strong problem solving skills. So those were the 3 that came out as sort of the most important out of those individual action strategies. And interesting, when we asked whether or not service providers were currently implementing them or have implemented them, you'll see that the majority of them actually had implemented those individual action strategies. When we took a look at sort of LBS providers versus non-LBS providers, we saw that for all of those individual action strategies, 60% or more of the LBS service providers were implementing all of those individual action strategies. We saw lesser implementation from non-LBS service providers. And the only exception we saw where we saw sort of lesser implementation from both groups was around the completion of a personal assessment tool to determine staff sensitization to poverty. So for this, we had LBS service providers, 40% of them weren't doing this, and 85% of non-LBS service providers weren't completing a personal assessment tool. So when we asked them whether or not they felt the individual action strategies helped clients and learners, yes, both LBS and non-LBS service providers felt that these strategies did help clients and learners. The 2 individual action strategies where there wasn't as much agreement around whether or not they helped client and learners were the Bridges Out of Poverty training, and this was specifically from the non-LBS providers, where 50% of the people responding to the survey said they don't know or didn't know if the Bridges Out of Poverty training helped clients and learners. 23% said no. So we had about 73% either saying no, they didn't think it helped, or not knowing whether or not it did. And then same thing on the completion of a personal assessment tool. So again, from the non-LBS service provider perspective, we had 39% of people responding to the survey said no, they didn't think that that actually helped clients and learners, and 30% felt that they didn't know. But when we looked at individual action strategies, overall, for the most part, workers in both the LBS and non-LBS streams were able to see the link between the individual action strategies that were identified through the best practices and client and learner success. So that was what we heard from the online survey. So what we did then is we had a roundtable with LBS and non-LBS service providers to get them to, again, contextualize this and help to identify what were some of the barriers or challenges to actually implementing some of those individual action strategies. So you see here a list of some of the things they identified in terms of reasons why some of the strategies weren't being implemented. So you'll see that sometimes assessment tools can be very expensive. So one of the ones that wasn't being implemented to the same extent as others were that personal assessment of sensitization to poverty. There were comments that there wasn't a common assessment tool for the community, that Bridges Out of Poverty training isn't mandated, and usually people who already know a lot about it, so they call them the converted, already attend the training versus sending people who may benefit from receiving it. And the other thing that was mentioned about the Bridges Out of Poverty training is that it's a US-based program, so it may not necessarily be reflective of how we view diversity in Canada. A few other reasons why we may have seen lesser implementation on the non-LBS side was that people felt that LBS service providers have a higher level of interaction with their clients, so they spend a longer amount of time with them than on the non-LBS side. See some cynicism from workers, limited time available, high caseloads, and that the work within an organizational context actually may not support it. So that was sort of the first level of the best practices that were identified. The second level of best practices that were identified through the project were called program element strategies. So these were those things that you could put into LBS programs that may assist with making that link between literacy and poverty reduction. So again, long list of different strategies that you're seeing here. A number of them have to do with professional development for instructors around communication skills, relationship building, problem-solving skills, a mentorship program. Then you're seeing some around what should be included in instruction in the program. So again, those skills, problem solving, relationship building, financial literacy, health literacy. Another long list on this slide of, again, some of those program element strategies that were identified as best practices. So a lot of different things were identified in terms of potential strategies that would be viewed as best practices in terms of linking literacy to poverty reduction. So we did the same thing as we did with the individual action strategies, though. So for this one, you'll note it's only for LBS service providers because these are program elements in LBS programs. So again, some of the highlights when we asked LBS providers whether or not their organizations implemented the strategies and whether or not they felt they helped clients and learners. Again, they felt many strategies helped facilitate learner success, but the top ones that came out were instruction in some of those skills. So essential skills, problem-solving skills, financial literacy, health literacy, and then how to access community resources. So those came out sort of at the top strategies that were being implemented. For the most part, though, LBS service providers are currently doing them, plan to do them, or have implemented all of the strategies in the past. And we took a look at that long list, those 2 slides of all the different program element strategies. It ranged from 60% to 100% of respondents who were actually currently implementing those strategies. So high level in terms of the implementation rate of the strategies. Some of the strategies, though, weren't being implemented to the same extent as others, and those are the 3 that you'll see here on your screen. So the mentorship program for learners and clients, 40% of LBS providers said they weren't implementing that. Training supports from MTCU are available, so transportation and childcare, again, 40% said they weren't doing that. And program manager completes a program self-assessment tool annually. 33% of the respondents said that they weren't implementing that. So again, for the most part, the LBS providers feel that these program element strategies have helped clients and learners. The ones, again, that were questionable, so didn't receive as high a rating as some of the other ones, were the 3 that you'll see on your screen. So the established mentorship program for learners and clients, 40% said no, they didn't think that that helped client or their learners. Training supports from MTCU, we had, again, 40% said no, they didn't think it did. And program manager completes the program self-assessment tool annually. 20% said no, and 25% said that they didn't know. So again, when we took these responses to the roundtable that we had, and we asked them about, again, what were those barriers or challenges, help us sort of understand why some of the strategies are being implemented, why some of the other ones aren't being implemented. These are some of the response that we saw. Interesting, when we asked why agencies weren't implementing or providing the training supports, especially around the transportation and childcare, interesting response from agencies said that if they did it, they had a higher level of auditing and accounting. It was really time intensive for them, lots of paperwork because there's a prescribed process. So that actually limited or prevented or provided a challenge to them in terms of providing those training supports. Again, the other one around the mentorship program, we had a really good discussion around what mentorship means, so people weren't really sure what that actually meant, and people just don't have the time to complete program manager assessment tools. So needing to see the value or benefit in it to be willing to put the time into doing it. So those are the program element strategies, which were sort of the second level of best practices that were identified through that original project. The final or third level of best practices that were identified in the program were around community engagement strategies. So again, these are looking at linkages or connections with the broader community for both LBS and non-LBS service providers. So on this page, you'll see that there are 6 different best practices that were identified. A lot of it around either linking or providing information to other community organizations, being up to date or being involved in poverty reduction strategies, and having an understanding of the poverty reduction roundtable within their community. When we looked at how well they're being implemented, or whether or not they're having an impact on client or learner success in the community, the strategies that came out as sort of the top ones that were being implemented were coordinated community information referral protocols, professional development with community organization, and information sharing about agency programs. So those came out as sort of the top or the most important strategies that were identified through the community engagement. Majority of LBS service providers are currently implementing all of the community engagement strategies, though you'll see non-LBS service providers, again, implementing them to a lesser extent, where they're implementing 4 out of 6 of those strategies. The 2 that they're not implementing as much as the other ones are the 2 that you'll see here on your screen. So my agency encourages staff to become involved with community poverty reduction activities. We only had 42% of non-LBS service providers said that they do that, and having an understanding of the poverty reduction roundtable, only 43% of non-LBS service providers said that they have that. So you see not as much implementation on those. But again, when we asked both LBS and non-LBS service providers whether or not they felt the community engagement strategies had helped clients and learners, all LBS providers said yes, we feel that they have. For the most part, non-LBS providers said they felt the strategies had helped clients and learners, but again, some of the ones which didn't receive as much support around that were more questionable from the non-LBS side, were the 3 that you see here. So my agency encourages staff to become involved with community poverty reduction activities. We had 20% say no, it didn't help, 25% didn't know. Being up to date in the poverty reduction strategies, we had 43% saying they don't know. And understanding of the poverty reduction roundtable, again, 55% said don't know. So a lot of sort of not knowing whether or not those helped clients and learners from the non-LBS service provider perspective. So at the roundtable, when we asked people why we were either seeing strategies not being implemented, or what were some of the barriers or challenges, or why people felt it may not help clients or learners, again, these are some of the things that were mentioned. It's interesting that at the roundtables we had a lot of frontline staff, not necessarily EDs or managers, And the response we got from them was that lower level staff may not know that the agency is involved in poverty reduction activities or that the agency sits at the poverty reduction roundtable. So it may be, again, that don't know may be valid in that it may be a certain level of staff that's involved in activities or is knowledgeable about some of the linkages between literacy and poverty reduction that are happening in the community. Time, again, another big issue. Some people, again, jaded or that cynicism piece. That the training is offered in the community, and when it is offered in the community, if you're an organization, typically you don't send all your staff. You may send 2 to 3 or a small number of staff that can go to the training. So again, looking at the limited amount of people that may be exposed to either the training or the information that's available. And again, thinking of time, a lot of focus is put on putting out fires. So based on the responses to the online survey, we compiled the top 10 lists, or like David Letterman, but these are the top 10 lists of strategies that are were highlighted as being the most important or most effective in terms of linking literacy to poverty reduction. And we did this list based on the percent of respondents who are either currently doing the strategy or have done it in the past. So you see a lot of them around some of those skills that we identified, PD opportunities, updates with other community agencies. So on the first page, it ranges here, 1 to 5 range from, at the top, 97% of the respondents are either currently doing it or done it, down to number 5, which was 89%. You see it ranges a little bit lower, so again, problem-solving skills, awareness of the impact of poverty, becoming involved with and collaborating with other people on poverty reduction. So some good top 10 strategies that were identified. You note on this page, though, when we get to number 10, it was only 75% that were currently doing it or had done it in the past. So the first page are really those top 5 that were almost all in the 90+% of organizations that had implemented them in the past. And in terms of the impact on clients and learners, you'll see from the non-LBS and the LBS side some similarities. The increase in appropriate referrals, better able to meet the needs of clients and learners, increased awareness. So some really good things that were identified in terms of if you implement these strategies, what some of the impacts could be. The last piece that I'm going to highlight pretty quickly for you are, we did a comparison. So that the last information I talked about was sort of the 2013 view of the best practices. What we did, though, which was great, is we had the people that were involved in the original project had completed a survey in 2009. So what we did is we compared changes in practice between the strategies from 2009 to 2013 to say, are there some where we saw a decrease in terms of implementation? Are there others where we saw an increase in terms of implementation? So it shows you the sort of a shift over time in terms of the implementation of the strategies in the different communities. So I'm just going to give you a little taste of that. You'll see it that I do it by service provider. So this first one looks at LBS, service providers, and it looks specifically at the individual action strategies that we talked about, so what agencies can be doing. And I'm not showing you all of them because there are an awful lot of strategies, but what I'm showing are sort of the extreme changes either in terms of an increase or a decrease in change. So you'll see in terms of the individual action strategies, LBS providers actually from 2009 to 2013, they increased in their implementation in all of the strategies, and there were a lot of them, except for one, which is the one you see at the bottom of your page here, the 8.6% decrease, ensuring that all staff receive Bridges Out of Poverty training information. So really good sort of continuity in terms of either maintaining or increasing, but really increasing because the increase ranged from a low of 5.7% to a high of 33.3%, which is seen on the screen there. Non-LBS, a little bit different story, mixed results in terms of the implementation of the individual action strategies from 2009 to 2013. Mixed results for half of the strategies we saw an increase in implementation, and half of the strategies we saw a decrease in implementation. The highest one in terms of the increase was this one with a 10.3% increase, which is having up-to-date information on community resources. And the biggest decrease, which is a decrease of 37%, was receiving Bridges Out of Poverty training. So you notice a theme there for both LBS and non-LBS service providers in terms of a decrease around receiving Bridges Out of Poverty training, which could be linked to the fact that the training may not have been offered in the community over that time period. When we go to the program element strategies, Again, LBS service providers, they again saw an increase in implementation in all of the strategies except 3. Biggest increase by a lot, 71.4%, was learners receiving self-advocacy training and information on how to become politically engaged. And the largest decrease was 11.4% decrease around those training supports of transportation and childcare. So there's no non-LBS for program elements because that was only for LBS programs. So if we go to LBS service providers and the community engagement strategies, they maintained or increased their implementation level of all of the strategies from 2009 to 2013 except for 1, which was a decrease of 5.7% around providing regular updates to all community agencies. Non-LBS, in terms of community engagement strategies, again, mixed results. We saw half seeing an increase in implementation and half seeing a decrease in implementation. Large increase, 25%, in terms of providing regular updates to relevant community agencies, and a decrease of 17.7% around becoming involved with community poverty reduction activities. So at the roundtable discussion, we wanted to probe around why did we see an increase in implementation in some of these strategies from 2009 to 2013? Why did we see a decrease in implementation in others? So you'll see why we saw an increase in implementation. That the group talked about sort of the philosophy and approach in their community and how it's becoming more client or person-centered, which may be why you're seeing an increase in some of those strategies or best practices around linking literacy to poverty reduction. They did hold a follow-up from Bridges Out of Poverty training, which meant more people got trained in that 2009 to 2013 period. They've linked with, so Pathway to Potentials is the poverty roundtable that they have in the Windsor-Essex area, so a lot of agencies have linked up with them. They noted that there's been an increased awareness about the importance of learning as a stepping stone, especially to employment, and making that link between learning and employment. And that OALCF has mandated new aspects, which we saw some of those large increases, especially around the advocacy and civic participation. In terms of why they're noticing a decrease in implementation, budget constraints, not a priority. You're seeing people talk about how change, there's been transformative change in a lot of different sectors, so people are really focused on change in their own agencies or their sectors. That frontline staff are involved, so those higher level staff are involved. And again, even though the people mentioned as an increase that people see learning as a stepping stone, noted again in the decrease that still need to see that stronger connection around learning and employment. So 4 key lessons came out of the project they want to keep working on. Key thing was that those strategies that they identified on the 3 levels, the individual action strategies, the program elements, and community engagement strategies, do make a difference in client and learner lives. The other key lesson they learned is that we still need to work on making that clearer link for people between literacy and poverty and learning and employment. That poverty training needs to be provided to frontline staff, and that frontline staff need to be involved in discussions about how to better meet the needs of their clients and learners. The roundtable that we had, as I said, was a lot of frontline staff, and they really appreciated the opportunity to come and really dig into this topic and have a really meaty discussion around sort of literacy and poverty reduction and what they could be doing differently as frontline workers in terms of supporting their clients and learners to be successful. In terms of next steps for this community, so they've said, you know, this project has been great. We've learned some really interesting things about it. Let's talk about what we can do to continue on with it. You want to continue to create those better connections between community partners, which I think a lot of communities are really working on. They want to provide poverty training in community for frontline workers. So interesting, if you think back to some of the comments around Bridges Out of Poverty, how they know that it was U.S.-based, they want to do some local training. So really developing that local context around poverty and doing some training for that. They want to invite someone in to talk about circles, and also really understanding what literacy is. So, and I know, again, a lot of communities are struggling with that L word and what it actually means and how it's changed over time. So talking about doing an awareness campaign around literacy and the connection between literacy and poverty reduction. And the final thing that Tri-County Literacy Network is going to be doing is they're going to partner with Pathway to Potential, which is their poverty roundtable, and Ontario Works to follow up on that awareness campaign and to talk about the poverty training and circles information and getting it out to frontline staff. These are the next steps for the community. So just as a quick ask to you, we're going to do a little poll, and you'll see it pop up on your screen, but I want you to rate the level of understanding of the link between literacy and poverty reduction in your community. So not necessarily you as an individual or you as an agency, but what do you think the level of understanding of the link between literacy and poverty reduction is in your community? So you've got 4 different responses you can pick from. So is it high level, a medium level, a low level, or you don't know?
Jen, while the responses are coming in, and they are coming in, we're just over half, just a quick question. What is Circles?
Circles is an interesting, you should Google it if you don't know what it is, but Circles is an interesting project which looks at supporting people who have a lower socioeconomic status and doing, I call it more wraparound supports in terms of providing mentors and a circle or wraparound approach to actually supporting individuals and families. So maybe what I can do as part of the follow-up is we could send out a link to that. Is that a possibility?
Yep, that would be great. And the results from the poll, we've got 13% with a high level of understanding, 42 at medium, 38 at low, and 8 don't know.
Great. Thank you for doing the poll. So that's it in terms of the project. They're going to continue to move forward with it, as I said, which I think is great. To me, it's an ongoing or continuing process and dialogue that you have in your community around how you continue to move forward with this. So I think that in the Tri-County area, so the Chatham, Kent, Windsor, Essex area, they've identified some really concrete next steps that will continue to move that dialogue forward for them. So I'm just going to highlight some of the upcoming webinars. If you have a chance or interested, there are 3 more coming up, December 13th, December 16th, and December 17th. You can feel free to ask for more information or register with them with CLO. As well, at the end of the webinar, you will receive an evaluation that will come to you through GoToWebinar, and we really appreciate your feedback on the webinar and sort of what you've learned and other things we may want to focus on. So if you can take some time to do that, that would be very helpful for us. And as well, if you want more information about the project, I put some information for Tri-County Literacy Network there for you as well. And I was going to ask Joanne if we have time for people who have questions. Have you noted any questions that we need to stay on the line for, or how are we doing with that?
Yes, I'm just going to stop the recording, so thanks everyone, and then we will get to the questions.